You think you might want to live on a sailboat for a while. You might want to buy a sailboat. But then what happens at the end? How do you get rid of that boat? Today, we want to share with you how we sold our sailboat. Welcome to the What Could Go Right podcast. We are your hosts, Erik, Orton.
And I'm Emily Orton.
And here we talk about personal growth and sailing. In 2014, we moved aboard a fixer-upper sailboat and bootstrapped a year sailing with our 5 kids, and it changed our lives forever.
We tell the whole story in our memoir, our book, 7 at Sea. On this podcast, we want to help you go from fear to freedom, one adventure at a time. So one of the biggest things that we were most worried about is like, well, if we get a boat, then what do we do with it? Like, we have to live on it forever now?
Yeah, exactly. So in a previous episode, we talked about this idea of this family who sailed from France to French Polynesia and then sold their boat and sailed home, and they sold it for about what they bought it for, and how inspiring that was. And we ended up doing something fairly similar, but today I'd like to talk about some of the nuts and bolts of actually selling a boat. Some of you that are listening actually have aspirations to move aboard a sailboat and live for a time on a boat, or maybe for lots of time, long time. And you may never want to sell your boat, or you may want to eventually sell your boat and buy a better boat or a smaller boat, or, but what is it? What's the process of selling a boat? And some of you may not want to live on a boat or sail at all, but you're just thinking like, how do I arrive at the end of this dream or this chapter that I have? And what's your exit strategy, I guess?
Yeah. Or you might just be curious.
You might just be, or you may just be like, what are the Ortons up to now? Anyway, so the adage is begin with the
end in mind.
Begin with the end in mind. So we went into our year living on a sailboat with the idea that we would sell our boat. And so we're going to talk about what that looked like. So, okay, here's how it went down. We bought our boat, fixer-upper, St. Martin in the Caribbean, sailed it back to Manhattan, and then once we arrived, the very next day, we did not sell the boat. We had arranged with some friends of ours that had 4 kids, and they wanted to go out and sail for a time on their own. And we had talked to them previously, and we're like, buying a boat is a bit of a pain in the butt. And so if you want to just use our boat and rent it from us, it'll save you a lot of hassle, and it would actually help us out because we don't know what we want to do with our boat. We thought we wanted to sell it, but we also thought, what if we can keep this going? What if we can find a way to get the money back together, or find a way to earn money on the water and head back out? And so we weren't ready to sell our boat just yet. Is that safe to say?
I think it's really good that you bring this up because, yes, we had a plan, but then we made an emotional connection. We had so many significant experiences aboard that boat that we didn't feel emotionally ready to just cut ties the moment we stepped onto the dock, off the boat, and, back into our New York City life. And so this was the perfect segue for us. We also had depleted our savings while we were on this trip. And so we couldn't really keep a boat and our apartment going at the same time. And so this allowed us to hang on to the boat, get a little distance between the memories we had just barely created and that strong connection to the sailboat. And then by the time this other family had the experience that they wanted to have, it was about 6 months later.
Mm-hmm.
And 6 months after the journey,
after our journey,
we were at a place where we were able to say, I think we've done everything we want to do with that boat. I think if we are going to sail again, it will be with a different boat. We're so grateful for that sailboat, and we're now ready, emotionally ready, to let it go. And so anyway, that was a big part of it, was that, you know what, we're human. We got attached to a thing and we didn't just want to sell it off. And so we were really grateful to find this kind of midway solution while we reflected on our experience.
Yeah. So I think you're right, because the original plan was to sell the boat, and then we had such a powerful experience. We weren't ready to let it go. And so we were trying to find a way to prolong the magic, as we say. Mm-hmm. But then we realized this is the right move for us right now. and we decided to sell the boat. So I want to kind of talk through what that looked like. First of all, this other family, they met us in New York the day we docked there, and then they hopped on the boat with me, and Emily and I, we sailed back down to New Jersey with them. You hopped off and got our car that we left. The whole story is in the book. It's pretty fabulous what happens at the end with our boat. Anyway, so then Emily got off the boat in New Jersey and drove back to New York. And then I continued with them down the coastline to Chesapeake Bay, training them on our particular boat. Man, I wished we'd had that. Like if we could have had somebody like
just coach us on our boat
for a week, that would have been really great. Anyway,
I think it was tricky for them. They weren't in a situation where they were going to be able to get the financing for a boat, but they definitely had the money to rent it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they have their ASA certifications.
They were competent enough sailors.
They were sailing savvy, but they may not have had like a specific.
They didn't have a lot of live aboard experience, and yeah, I don't remember.
And so you spent a week with them, and it helped them avoid. They were able to have their experience without having to purchase their own boat and without having to go through
all
the costly process of certification. But you knew they had the experience and were trained up, because crazy thing that might also blow your mind is that you don't have to have like a special license or a certification or anything if you just want to get your own boat. It's only if you want to rent from somebody else that you need those certifications. So you gave them your own version, your own training program, basically. Like, I'll stay with you for a week. We'll have a lot of different experiences.
It's kind of what we do now on our sailing trips. Like, I just teach people how to sail, because yeah, you're right. Everyone, if you want to have a power boat, yes, you do have to have a license. If you want to have a sailboat, you don't. And by a power boat, I mean just like a speedboat or a lake boat or something. You have to register and take some kind of online class. But for a sailboat, you don't even have to have that if it's your own boat.
Yeah, if it's your own boat.
So yeah, funky reality. So we sailed down the coast to the Chesapeake Bay, and Emily came down and picked me up there, and we drove home. And they took the boat. They took our good ship Fezziwig down to the Bahamas for 6 months with their own kids, and had an amazing experience. The day that I got off the boat in the Chesapeake Bay and Emily picked me up was the last time I laid eyes on dear Fezziwig, our boat. And because when they brought it back, they sailed it from the Bahamas back to Fort Lauderdale. And we had been looking into how we were going to sell our boat. Actually, before I go in, I was talking about who, not how. If you go back to our episode on who, not how, in a way, I was a who for them in learning and getting into, we were a who that made it possible for them to get onto the water easier and with more skill and confidence than if they'd done it on their own. And
they just heard us talk at something and then started following our journey, and then sent an email, and then, hey, could we rent this boat from you? And we said, oh yeah, that's actually the perfect solution for us as well. So it was an easy yes.
And they were a who for us that solved the problem of immediately what to do with our boat. So I'm hearkening back to that who, not how concept from the previous episode, because I'm going to come back to it.
It got emotional at this stage of selling the boat as well.
Yeah. So they sailed the boat back to Fort Lauderdale. Fort Lauderdale. And we knew that the easiest place to sell a boat is on the east coast of Florida. Miami, Fort Lauderdale, that whole area is like sailboat capital of the United States.
Especially a catamaran. I mean, that is
it's a warm water boat. Yeah. So they sailed it there, and it took us about a minute to decide between, do we want to try and sell this boat on our own, or do we want to hire a broker? Did it take that long?
If by a minute you mean a few weeks, then I agree with you, because
am I misremembering it?
Erik, you wanted to do it yourself. You're like, I just want to do it myself. I don't want to pay a percentage. I don't want to have somebody else do it. And I said, what are you going to do? You're going to fly from here to Florida every time somebody wants to see the boat? Like, how much will that cost? And we had some morning walk back and forth conversations over some time. Maybe it wasn't a couple of weeks, but it wasn't like, oh yeah, let's just sell it. But it was a moment where you changed your way of thinking about things, and you were really humble and open to this different idea of not doing it yourself. You said, I'm going to switch from my DIY mindset, and I'm going to get some help from someone who does this all day, every day, and knows what sells.
Yeah. And I'm so glad we did. And I appreciate you setting me straight there, because I like to think that I came to it quickly, but I think it was a shift for me. And this is a really great example of who, not how, because another part of me, another maybe a previous version or just another aspect of me thinks, oh, I can save. I forget what the commission
I
is,
don't know.
whether
It's
it's
like,
like somewhere between 10 and 20%. I can't remember, but it's a chunk.
we'll call it 15%.
Sure, we'll just say 15 to make it easy. I can't remember, but 15% of anything that's six figures is a chunk. And I was like, oh, I can save that. I'd rather keep the money and do the legwork. And Emily's like, no, and she was right. And so
The fact that you can't even remember what the percentage was is a good
it
is
is
a
a good
good
sign.
sign.
So we just Googled boat brokers and interviewed a few of them, and told them about our boat. We hadn't seen it in 6 months. We assumed it was in decent shape. Our friends that got off, they sent us some pictures and videos, and we just said, we had this lined up before they came back to Florida, and so we had arranged with the broker. He's like, first of all, you're going to need to have a place to put it, to park it, and guess what? He found us a place.
A great deal.
He negotiated somebody's backyard that abutted a waterway where you could just sail right up and basically like park it in their backyard, but it was still accessible. And we were paying a few $100s a month to park it there, but our friends just sailed it up, parked it there, and got off and went home. And then our boat broker, we talked through what we wanted to list it for, which was more than what we paid for it because we put a lot of improvements into it. And we thought, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we came out ahead on this? And he said, okay, let's go. Let's see what we can find. And we put it out there and listed it. And immediately he's like, there's a couple things you need to change. First of all, we need to have somebody go over in detail it. Just clean it, wipe it down, get it looking great so that it shows well. A little bit of money for that. Okay. So we spent, I can't remember how much,
whatever
hundreds
it was.
of dollars or a few $100s. And then he's like, okay, we had this really sad sack dinghy that
fill with water
that we had used to get our family to and fro from our big boat to shore. And it was just kind of like hanging off the back of the boat, and it had a good outboard engine on it, but the dinghy itself has been pretty beat up and worked over. And he's like, I think you should just get rid of it. Like throw it away, get rid of it. Like not even try and sell it. And we're like, okay.
What do we do with the engine, the outboard?
So they just took they mounted it on there's like a little board on the stern where you can mount it so that
they can get their own new dinghy.
And they can purchase their own, dinghy, but they can still use our outboard, which is really good because we bought a brand new one when we moved aboard.
And it was one you couldn't buy in the States.
Yeah, it was a 2-stroke, which you can't buy that in the United States for emissions reasons.
Oh.
So, but anyway, so everything this guy said, we just did it. We're like, look, you know how to sell boats. He's like, if you want to, he said, you can hang on and try and get your higher price and sell it in maybe a year and a half. And by that time you'll have paid so much in docking it and maintaining it and securing it that, yeah, you still might come out ahead, or you can drop the price significantly and move it quick.
Sell it
He's
now.
like, what do you want? Do you want to like hold out for a higher price, or do you want to sell it quick? And we said, let's sell it quick.
Mm-hmm.
And so we did. We dropped the price twice, quickly, meaningfully, and all of a sudden interest started to pour in. And because he was there, he was able to show it or have somebody else show it. People were able to go by, take a look at it, because we didn't bring it back to New York. There was nothing for us to do with that boat.
I think they mailed us a package of like books or documents they had found that we had left on it 6 months earlier.
So yeah, but it had been cleared out. And so we just trusted our broker, and he just walked us through the process. And I think we got a couple of offers, and then, we accepted one of them, and then it went to inspection, and we had a couple of scares because I remember they were getting ready to close on the boat, and I think they hauled it out and they found, what was it?
There was some kind of work on the hull.
There was some work on the hull that had it looked like there had been some fiberglass damage that had been patched over and painted over. And as they stripped the boat down to repaint it themselves, they're like, hey.
Oh, that was after they purchased it.
I think it was after they purchased it. And they're like, hey, what happened here? You didn't disclose this. And we're like, This was there before we bought the boat, and
We didn't know about it.
we'd never seen it. And obviously, and I was like, bro, we lived on it for a year. This other family lived on it for a year and a half. If it was a problem, it would have turned into a problem by now. The boat is fine. Just put some more paint on it and go on your merry way.
I think, that was the risk, because it had been moved around from charter base to charter base, and its history, its documents had been lost. And so,
so we didn't have a lot of the maintenance history before we purchased it.
All we could say is like, this has been our experience. This is everything we know. We've told you 100%.
Yeah, like we didn't smash it into a rock. We didn't create any damage. Like when we bought it, it's in the condition that you're receiving it.
Better.
Yeah, it's even better. And so our broker just kind of like walked us through it, and we sold the boat within 90 days.
Yeah, within 90 days.
And it was great because he said, we're getting close. We're getting close. Not because offers were pouring in, but because he said the number of views that this thing is getting online, I know that once we get within this range, we'll start to get offers. And then once we get offers, we'll get one that's good and it'll tip and it will sell. Mm-hmm. And we're just like, okay.
But I think it was a decision on our part, because first of all, we had to switch from DIY mindset. We didn't call it this at the time, but to who. It's like, we want to let someone who is a specialist at this is the guy for us. He's going to be the one who sells our boat in 90 days or less. And so that was the first decision. And when he started coming back with things to do, we were kind of like at first we were just a little bit
stingy,
a little bit resistant, and do we really need to do that? Do we really have to spend this money? And at a certain point, I think after the first couple of requests on his part, we just decided we're going to do whatever he says.
Yeah, we're
going to be an easy client, and we're just going to do whatever he says. And I don't think we fully trusted him until after the 90 days when the boat was sold. But we just decided we were going to go along with him,
Yeah.
And then afterwards we were like, now we can tell the story. We're like, oh yeah, we just had this broker, he got us a great deal on some dockage, and he had it turned around within 90 days. We just did whatever he said, and it all worked out. But at the time it was like this slog for us emotionally, and going back and forth, and like a little resistance. We had never done it before. And that's why we're sharing with you like what it was like. Now we know we would easily just say, oh yes, we'll have somebody who's a pro do this.
Yeah, like just find the right, find a good broker, let them list it, do what they say, sell your boat.
Yeah, let them get their percentage, and you get the peace of mind, and you don't have to hassle with every single person who wants to view. You just get pinged when something serious comes up.
So if you go back to the episode that's called DIY versus Who Not How, we talk about this triangle, the sort of the business school triangle of you can get two of three things. You can have it good, you can have it fast, or you can have it cheap. And in this case, it was good and it was fast, but it wasn't cheap. We paid the commission, and we're going to say 15%, which is a chunk.
But we felt like it was reasonable.
And actually, I think we sold it for enough that by the time we took out the commission, we were at break even. Yeah. I think we sold it for enough that his commission was paid for. So anyway, the point being,
and emotionally, it was so much less draining on us.
I have to say, the emotional release that I felt from when the boat sold was huge, because we were in financial recovery mode. And listeners, if you haven't, I have a book. It's on our website. Go to the section called books, and it's a book called Knock, The Spiritual Journey of a Door-to-Door Salesman. And it's the whole story about what happened after we came back from our trip. It picks up like the day I got off the boat. and I talk about the day we sold our book.
We can link it in the show notes.
Yeah, we'll link it in the show notes. But I talk about the day that we sold the boat and what a lift it was off of my shoulders, because we were in financial recovery mode. And I don't think I realized until, for me, the moment we sold the boat, that was when the trip ended. Yes, coming back, we made it home and we were back in our apartment and I was back at work. And yes, we had our friends leasing our boat and all that. But it wasn't until we sold the boat that it was truly the end for me. Like, we had done the thing full circle. We paid off the mortgage for the boat. We were free and clear. We'd had the experience. It was totally done. It could not be undone. And it was like wrapped up.
Nope, nobody was going to
Totally
come
wrapped up.
after you. For me, it was, writing the book was really maybe the ribbon on top.
I think that was
But
the ribbon on top. But I think, yeah, for me, the trip was over when we sold the boat for sure. And so if you're ever thinking of buying a boat, and the joke is that what are the two happiest days in the life of a boat owner? The day that you buy the boat and the day that you sell the boat. I,
I
I
wonder if this applies to RVs as well.
maybe I'll say this. It was not a happy day. It was a bittersweet, kind of sad day. I was very sad to sell Fezziwig, but I was also very relieved. And so I look forward. Is it safe to say that we have another boat in our future at some point?
Probably, and I felt grateful.
Yeah.
Also, I felt grateful at that point. Like Fezziwig, she floated. She gave us these amazing experiences. And at the end of the day, she didn't sink us financially either. Like we stayed, she took good care of us. And I felt so grateful.
Okay. Here's the button on this for me is that so this lovely couple in California retired, bought the boat, fixed it up, redid the canvas, which really needed to be redone, and made a bunch of other improvements, and then went sailing for a few years with their,
They didn't. I didn't think they sail full time, but I think they would
they're like
take their grandkids out.
Yeah, 6 months on, 6 months off, and they would have their kids or grandkids come join them. Anyway, the boat was out and about, and one of my coworkers, where I went back to work, was on vacation in Florida one day, and he sends me this picture, and it's a picture of our boat, Fezziwig. The new owners kept the name because they liked it, and it's just sailing through one of those canals in Fort Lauderdale. And he's like, "Is this your boat?" And I was like, "That is our boat."
And he's not the only one.
and
Other
then
people, like, where did the
and then we got a
Silver
picture.
Heels
We
get
got a
it?
picture from
It was Ken from Silver Heels,
right. What's the last island in the Caribbean chain at the
the
bottom?
Grenada.
Yeah, he was in Grenada, and we get a picture of our boat in Grenada. And it's like, "Hey, your boat's here at anchor." And so
Like, yay!
we're so happy that the boat is out there in the world being used and enjoyed, and we don't feel any regret at all about selling it and releasing it to a new chapter in life. And so I just think that's another part of selling a boat is just letting it go on to new adventures with new owners, to new places, and and it's fun to get pinged every now and then. So if anyone sees a little 38-foot lagoon out there, catamaran called Fezziwig out there, snap us a picture and send it along, because we would be delighted to know where it's at in the world these days. But I'm super happy we sold the boat, and I'm super happy how we sold it, and that it's out there in the world, helping new people make new memories.
Love it. What could go right?
What could go right? Hey there, this is Erik. Just want to let you know what the latest is on sailing. First of all, people are having a blast on these trips, and we're actually kind of overwhelmed with the response. But we're having fun, so we're going to keep going. All right, so we do have some limited space for trips this fall and winter. All of our summer trips are full up, but in fall, winter 2024, we have room on a trip to Italy in September, Mexico in October, Thailand in November, and Bahamas in December. So there are limited spaces for those trips coming up. However, we also are booking into 2025. So in the winter months, we're going to be going to warm places like the Bahamas and the Caribbean. And then once we get more into summer, we're going to be in Europe. So Croatia, Greece, Italy, and hopefully we're going to do a week in Mallorca, Spain. So that's the lineup. And if you're interested in any of that, go to theawesomefactory.nyc/sailing 2024. This will also be in the show notes. You can also email us at hello@theawesomefactory.nyc. So go to the show notes. The link is theawesomefactory.nyc/sailing 2024, even though we're talking about trips into the future in 2025. You can also email us at hello@theawesomefactory.nyc. Would love to welcome you aboard.